Donald Trump is still 2 weeks short of completing 100 days as a U.S. president. But in less than 3 months, lawsuits have piled up, protests at a common site, sensitive information has been mistakenly leaked to a journalist, while leaders are scrambling for meetings. The markets are facing uncertainty, and talks on 2 ongoing wars are still uncertain. Has Trump bitten off more than he can chew? Much has happened in the last 24 hours alone. The U.S. has decided to increase tariffs on China to 245%. This comes after China asked its airlines to suspend orders for jets from the American giant Boeing. There's no clarity on when the two sides will come to the negotiation table, and the White House remains steadfast that it is China that has to make a deal with the U.S. and not the other way around. And while the tensions remain high between the two superpowers, Japan's delegation is on a U.S. visit to negotiate the reciprocal tariffs that Trump first implemented on April 2nd and halted for 90 days to allow countries to make deals. But within the last 2 weeks, markets have witnessed a bloodbath, and economists are projecting a recession for the United States. That was trade. Let's now come to the wars that Trump promised to stop. In the ongoing Russia-Ukraine war, talks are still at very early stages for a proposed ceasefire. Just last week, U.S. Special Envoy Steve Witkoff was in Moscow to meet top Russian leadership and Putin. While the president says that Russia is open to peace, Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov has said reaching an agreement will not be easy. On the other hand, Ukraine says it has made inroads with the U.S. on the rare earth minerals deal, but there's still no clarity on when the agreement will be signed. Let's move on to the other war, the Israel-Hamas war, which is getting both sides to agree on a truce deal, has been a challenging issue for the U.S. Days after Witkoff said Washington was very close to secure the release of hostages, Hamas rejected a proposal sent by Israel via mediators. Then there is an impasse with Iran. Both Washington and Tehran have made big statements on what they will and will not negotiate during the nuclear talks. These were international issues. Let's now talk about domestic issues. There are over 70 active lawsuits against Trump and his administration. A federal judge has rebuked Trump over the return of a migrant wrongly deported to El Salvador. The judge has said there is no evidence that the Trump administration tried to secure Kilmar Abrego Garcia's return.
Bring Kilmar home! Bring Kilmar home! Bring Kilmar home! They try to separate us!
Before the hearing, dozens of protesters outside the courthouse chanted, "Bring Kilmar home," as they listened to his wife urge the U.S. and El Salvador to return him. The Trump administration previously admitted that Abrego Garcia was deported to El Salvador due to an administrative error. The president was ordered to facilitate his return, an order upheld by the Supreme Court. But his government has not yet asked El Salvador to return him. And to top it all, the U.S. president has gone on a tirade against Harvard University for rejecting to follow administration's orders that aim at restricting activism on campus premises. Trump's administration has frozen grants worth $2.2 billion and contracts worth $60 million. Donald Trump himself called for Harvard University to be taxed like a political entity and referred to the institution as a joke on his social media platform Truth Social. When Trump was inaugurated as president, he promised to end the wars within 100 days and sweeping reforms that will make America great again. With 14 days left to go to the deadline, the question is, can he? Mr. Lincoln Mitchell is a political analyst and professor in School of International and Public Affairs at Columbia University. Professor Mitchell is now joining us live from New York. Professor, thank you very much for making time for us, and it's good to see you again. Why don't we start with the threat issued by Trump after threatening to strip Harvard University of its tax-exempt starters and demanding an apology. The president traded his guns to your university, Columbia, and now both presidents of the universities have rejected what they call unlawful demands. Your reaction, and what do you make of this?
Well, he actually started with Columbia, then went to Harvard, then came back to Columbia. So we've been in the crossfire at Columbia for some time now. I think we have to be very clear. The best American universities, and if I may be immodest enough to include Columbia in that group, but also Harvard, the University of Michigan, the University of California system, has been a source of tremendous economic strength, political strength, cultural strength and development in the United States. And Trump is trying to destroy those universities. And he is using this issue of anti-Semitism, which is a real issue on college campuses, but also a real issue within the Trump administration, to do it. And in doing that, he is kind of leaning into the oldest anti-Semitic tropes, blaming the Jews, mobilizing anger against the Jews. But he is doing this because he wants to destroy the universities. And frankly, the only reason to destroy American universities is if you want to destroy the United States of America. And if Xi Jinping or Vladimir Putin came up with a 10-point plan, how do we destroy the U.S.? They would say, let's destroy the universities. It might not be first or second on that list, but it'd be in the top 10.
Professor, let me then ask you this. There has happened yet the president, the 100 days has not, happened, and the president has not even completed his 100 days. So in your view, do you think Trump has bitten off more than he can chew? And how does the future of America under his leadership look like? 4 years now look like it's an eternity.
It certainly does. And generally speaking, the way the kind of timeline of presidential politics works in the United States, you always want to do as much as you can as early as you can. So from that purely tactical perspective, what he's doing here is kind of conventional. You front load all of your important legislation, your policies. The difference is his policies are just so outside of the mainstream of American political life before him, and so damaging to the United States. And this question of how can we survive 4 years of this, that's a very serious question to which there is no easy answer. But it is hard to imagine the United States on, let's say, January 1st of 2029, looking anything like the United States did on January 1st of 2025. And the damage will be devastating. It already has been devastating, and it will take a very, very long time to recover. Once the world sees the United States go through this, as the world is seeing right now, it knows that the United States, it thought it understood as this island of stability, this most stable, safest place to go, to put your money, to have your civil liberties. That United States doesn't exist anymore, and that is very bad for the United States globally, and it is very bad for Americans as we go through our lives every day.
Professor, very quickly, and I know we are out of time, but very quickly, I just want to get to know from you, what's the end game for Donald Trump at this juncture?
The end game for Donald Trump is to find a way to stay in power for the rest of his life. And that is what he intends to do. And one of the things that has not been covered much is the executive order on elections, which was signed on March 25th of just recently. And that will do real damage to free and fair elections in the United States. This is a regime that is not going to leave power simply because they lose an election, and is unlikely going to allow that to happen because they will begin to undermine free and fair elections here in the U.S. That's the end game. There's no world for Donald Trump out of power because he knows that will lead straight to federal prison.
All right. Professor, we'll have to leave it there. Thank you very much for your time and for talking to us today.
My pleasure. Thank you.